Welcome to the MMHP and the 989, channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history, recorded live from the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame, located inside the Bay County Historical Museum,
from the city by the bay,
featuring Dr. J, Fred Reif, Mr. Mike, and your host, Scott Baker. Brought to you by the 989 Podcast Network and the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame, located at the Bay County Historical Society Museum at 321 Washington Avenue, Bay City, Michigan.
And we're back here with part two with Barbara Bacon here in the MMHP and the 989. We're so grateful for her stories, being a fly on the wall, along with her sister Carolyn, for all these great rock and roll stories in the earliest days here in Michigan. Here in part two, she gets to bring out a little more of the backstory on where she was at, some deep stories, Jackie Wilson, Mark Farner, Jeep Holland, Lenny and John Sinclair, and of course more adventures with her sister Carolyn. And we were so thrilled. She actually brought out stories from Dr. J and Sir Fred as well that they all shared, and this conversation was amazing. We are so grateful for Barbara Bacon. So tune in right now to the MMHP and the 989, part two, Barbara Bacon now. You said you were also trying to finish college. Where were you going to college at the time?
Well, I started at Flint U of M, and then I went to Ann Arbor, which made it all the more easy. I mean, because when I was in Ann Arbor,
You were there.
I was like, oh my God, I love the scene. And I could have cared less about being at U of M, you know? I mean, I didn't even walk the stage. It was like I just took my credential and left, you know? It was kind of like that wasn't what I was into.
Right.
Even though I knew I had to do that,
Yeah.
you know? And
Yeah.
my grades were horrible,
Yeah.
you know?
Anybody going to Ann Arbor today, it's so different from what it was in 1969,
Yeah.
1970. I mean, that was kind of like ground zero of radical politics and hardcore rock and roll. I mean, you know, Ann Arbor right now is pretty conservative. Wouldn't you
Yeah.
agree, Fred?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, you know.
Also at that time.
the personality of Ann Arbor's changing big time.
Oh,
Well, that
completely different now.
Right, yeah.
I just moved up here from Ann Arbor.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well,
that's one of the reasons I left, because it just it's becoming just another big city
that's too bad. Yeah.
with rents too high.
Oh God.
There
yes.
you go.
Oh,
Well,
God,
typical
yes.
of the big city,
Yeah.
yes.
No.
But anyways, I started there in 1970, 71, 72, but it was also at that time the blues. Every blues person played in Ann Arbor at the Blind Pig
Right.
or
Right.
at the festival.
You know, it's interesting. I didn't remember going to those things, but with all this activity, but I don't remember ever going to Blind Pig.
Or the Ark?
Huh?
Did you ever go to the Ark?
I don't remember.
That started after.
What was that after?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How about Goose Lake? Did you go to
my
Goose Lake?
sister
The big.
went. My sister went, here's a question for you. There was some concert at a big outdoor venue, and I don't know if it was Pete Andrews with U of M group or what, but I swear, because all those bands, all these Michigan bands, but I swear to God, Elton John was there. Do you ever remember a concert like in 69, 70, outdoors?
Yes, in Ypsilanti, at Ypsilanti, it must have been Stadium or something. We went to see Elton John live.
But it wasn't just Elton John. This was a lot of these Michigan groups.
I was at the Saugatuck Festival that Pete Andrews put on.
Well, that
But
would've been too
Elton
far.
John wasn't there.
That would have been too far.
Right,
I swear to God, I saw Elton
could've
John
been,
with all of these groups, and this was early, and he had a blue velour suit on, which is typical of, because he just did everything with clothing and style. It's so
flamboyant.
crazy, right? Flamboyant. But I can't, and I looked at his, I tried to retrace the old concert dates and stuff, so I can't resolve it, but it's like, I'm just so certain that happened, and nobody can kind of put that together.
I don't know. He headlined this show, outdoor show. Was there, at this point, I think he had Your Song, which was a real big hit.
And that was in
Tumbleweed
70?
Connection. Well, yeah, I think that was 70.
Okay.
Maybe,
Right.
because I know we went to see the movie Gimme Shelter, and then we saw a matinee of Gimme Shelter, the Stones, that 69 tour, and then we went to the Elton John show afterward.
And who else was performing? Do you remember?
I don't remember who opened, but there was an opening act, and
Sure.
Elton John was the headliner.
Yeah.
But yeah, it wasn't a big, like festival
Concert,
kind
festival
of thing.
That's how I relate it, and I don't. It doesn't make sense to me because I can't make it jive.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Anyway, so yeah.
Maybe one of our listeners out there knows the
Yeah.
back history of Elton John in Michigan and can
Yeah.
give us a little
Yeah.
feedback for Barbara.
So.
Wonderful. Huh. What an era.
Yeah.
I mean, so much going on. So you went to California. You were watching Streisand. You worked your way back to Michigan. Talk about that.
So I worked my way back because I wanted to finish. So it was I went to California in like 70, 71, and then I came back, and I told you we went to England, and then I came back, and in 73 I got married. So then I just went back to California State. Yeah.
Oh, you were back in California at that point.
Yeah.
I got
no,
you.
I stayed.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like I was not gonna, I wanted out of Michigan.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing too, and this is away from the whole rock and roll thing, but I mean, at that time, Volkswagen and Toyota were coming in and really changing what was happening with the industry in Michigan,
Oh, yeah.
with the cars.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I remember seeing these guys. It was amazing to me. You could come out of high school and go work in a factory and get paid $25 an hour and get benefits, and this was in the 70s. And it's like, and then the whole thing shifted with the Toyotas and the Volkswagens coming in and all that. And I saw these guys getting, they got laid off because they were union, but I saw these guys and their wives having to go to work, and that whole dynamic was shifting. And I thought, I don't want to be in this one horse town.
Yeah, and moving out of Michigan to work too. That was another big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, moving to Texas and where the jobs were.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like this whole scene is just, it seems like it's, and of course, California was like booming,
Mm-hmm. So when we sat down tonight here, you were correlating Funkadelic talk about that whole time period. So maybe you want to bring that in here and how that's all tied together and who you knew and all that.
Yeah. No, so this boyfriend was the manager of the Funkadelics. And so I was, that was, I want to say 71-ish, 72. And then
before you went back to California then.
And I went back to California, and then I got divorced, and I reconnected with my boyfriend, and we came back. Where was it? Did they come out? Anyway, I remember being with him, and we went, and he was producing this show, and it was that show where he went and got, I guess, the Starship. The mothership.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd seen him performing before. I've been at the shows before. But this was like beyond,
So you were with him, but you don't remember him going out and doing all this stuff. He just did it as his day job kind of thing. He put together.
What's that? You mean the boyfriend?
Yeah.
Oh, he was their manager, their producer. If you look at the albums, he's on there, and George is very complimentary about him. Just, he was very nice, and he was very nice to me too. I mean, he's a really nice guy. But he was. I remember him. He was. And maybe that was the connection with Motown. He was like, was it Martha Vandella or who else? So they kind of got dumped by Motown, or one of the female singers, and he so badly wanted to bring her back, and so I mean that was his background, I guess. Uh-huh. And so to me, that whole fit with the Funkadelics, like, it was just an evolution for him. But he knew all these Ann Arbor people. That's how I met him, just God, he took me to when I flew back, we went to a Cat Stevens concert. We're all in the front row. There's like 6 of us or whatever, and the cocaine's just flowing on our fingernails, just in the front row watching Cat Stevens. Like he like I said, he just exposed me to so many things in this whole musical Michigan scene that it was.
And
just
you want
so
the
exciting.
listeners to go out and dig up his name, is what you're saying? 'Cause obviously, we just had a huge segment on this, and
No, I can give you his name. It's like,
well,
okay. So this wonderful gentleman's name.
You're not going to say
you're not
it?
to say it.
No, I will say it. I'll say it.
Well, tell us, because you just gave a whole.
I was just to say this
You
wonderful
did-
man's name was Charlie Basseline.
Charlie Bass.
Vaseline. And it's like when I talk to people, nobody knows who he is. But then I see things on Facebook and stuff, and it's like, oh yeah, Charlie did this and Charlie did that. And it's like, that's what I remember. But
Is he still with us?
Yeah.
yeah, he's still with us.
Okay.
You meant, but Charlie. Okay.
Yeah, Charlie.
Charlie.
Yeah, Charlie. Yeah, yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
just yeah.
So you were at many Funkadelic concerts, parties, I imagine, and
Well, you
Getting that
know,
going.
that was toward the end, and so I wasn't. But I do remember being with him. For example, I went down to L.A. because we live in L.A. And we're sitting there having dinner, and this manager comes up to him and says, "I really want you to manage." I'm thinking of his name. The black singer, big group. Oh God, I'm so embarrassed. I can't remember his name. But nobody would touch the singer and his group, and they.
Lionel Richie Commodores.
No, the Commodores, and they
would've
all
been right on.
connected with Funkadelic, right?
I was wondering because I have
Yeah,
there's
no,
something in my
this
mind
is-
that ties.
Let
it.
me throw it. David Ruffin.
No, it was a
Yeah.
Motown. This is rock. Oh God, you're gonna laugh at me that I can't remember his name.
Rick James. I'm
No,
trying to think
go
of another-
deeper, go crazier, go like super druggy and just out of control. And he shows up for promotions now. But
Oh, a Sly Stone.
Sly.
Oh,
So
yeah.
this guy
Family Stone.
walked up and said to Charlie, "You know, I really want you to manage Sly." And Charlie said, "I'm not going to do it. He's too far gone, you know."
Oh yeah, he was.
You know?
It was terrible at
Yeah.
not showing up for concerts.
Yeah.
Really got bad there.
Yeah, no.
You know,
it-
right at the height of their fame too.
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
and
just
this
really.
was probably early 70s,
Yeah.
you know, but yeah, so.
So post Funkadelic, where was your music world heading at that point?
Nowhere.
Is that where it kind of curtails these stories?
That's it. It was kind of
Yeah.
like I left Michigan and all those connections, you know, just went away, and those groups weren't out in California, you know. So, you know, and it was like a different life, you know. It was totally a different life.
More Jackson
So.
Brown and
Oh yeah,
Barbara
Linda.
Streisand.
Well,
Yeah.
Linda Ronstadt.
totally Jackson
Eagles.
Brown.
Eagles. Yeah. all
Totally. Oh, my
Fleetwood
God.
Mac was
Yeah.
out there playing. You know,
Right,
that was
right.
a lot of good music came out of that.
Oh my
Crosby,
God,
Stills,
yes.
Nash and Young.
No, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's cool. Do you have Topanga go to the canyons and
You know, it's
do some
interesting.
partying?
I've never done that, but I was telling Gary last night. I have this friend who was the drummer of the Beatles.
Ringo.
Sure.
Thank
Yeah.
you. This is really embarrassing. Sorry. So
Your
she
sisters
was-
probably knows him pretty well.
Yeah.
she wasn't in that scene. She was in the Michigan scene.
Uh,
Anyway, so this friend became the personal assistant to Ringo because she knew his girlfriend, and his girlfriend was a photographer, and they were an item for years, and she would tell me stories about Topeka Canyon and people coming over, Harry Nilsson, you know, just people coming over, hanging out, you know, and
the Hollywood vampire scene right there.
yeah,
With
and
Alice
that whole
Cooper
scene, you know.
Well,
so
that's
she,
when Ringo was partying
Yeah.
pretty heavy. You
I-
know,
indeed.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
John
indeed.
Lennon was out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. And so she tells me the whole story that Nancy, apparently they were in a movie, and Nancy was there, but Barbara was in Barbara Boxer,
Bach. Yeah.
Bach was Boxer. Okay, do we vote for her? So she's a California senator. And so, at any rate, so Barbara was kind of, you know, just greasing Nancy for all the details she could get on Ringo. And then all of a
It's still
sudden,
together.
the shoes shifted, and
Yeah, Barbara's
Ringo
been there
was very
since.
interested. Yeah, she's been there ever since.
Yeah, they've been
Yeah.
together a long time.
They have been
I
together
remember
a very long time.
Ringo was doing Baby Snakes with Frank Zappa, and there was all sorts of the partying and the Hollywood Vampires talk going on around that time. But that was like Ringo was looking like Zappa purposely in that, like they would mimic each other. And it was his girlfriend, I think, is in that video, which that might have been her. That was
Ringo's girlfriend, you're saying?
Yeah, that's
Nancy.
like 73, 4, something like that, or maybe
Probably,
just a little bit before that. Maybe a little before that.
Totally. Yeah. No, and my friend was telling me she's met all these Hollywood personalities, so that's another version of the other side of the rock and roll. It was all these Hollywood personalities. She went out with Don Johnson and stuff like that. So again, these 15 minutes of fame that we have.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Wow.
Quite
a story.
How was your time there?
We're doing great. What did you miss in your notes? You got some wonderful liner notes.
What do I got here? So anything
we can
that
put
I
a
haven't
pause
told
for the
you that we
cause
could
edit this in before I go into the post show.
Well, you could tell us about your friend's stomach tattoo.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. Carolyn that
Carolyn.
was here. Yeah, and I don't know when she did that. What did she tell you?
She said it was a tattoo of
Of a
Bob
guitar.
Dylan's guitar
Yeah.
on her stomach.
Yeah, right.
So
Bob Dylan's guitar.
yeah, on her stomach.
Yeah. So
If we would have had our rub board stud here, Fred, she probably would have
she
showed
could have
us
played
the
the guitar
tattoo.
and you could have done the walk
Yeah, he would have
forward.
said, "I'll show you my rub board if you show me yours."
And then there's Mike with the Dylan L tattooed on his ass. So so we're all fit together over here.
Well, these women, like I said, they were fun, and so we saw Carolyn about 8 years ago. We had a family or a class reunion or something, and so I don't know. She couldn't make that, but anyway, so we all went to lunch, and we're having lunch, and she says, "I got to show you something," and so we went, "Okay, right, whatever." So she hauls us all into the women's bathroom and tells us the story of her guitar on her belly, and it's like
That's awesome. Wow. Oh, out of the blue.
Yeah, I mean, who gets a tattoo on their belly?
I'm telling you.
I'm a
So
Bob
these-
Dylan's guitar.
Yeah, I mean,
these are the
that's
women
a
I used-
true Dylan fan right there. That's
these
Dylan
women were
devotion.
Crazy. They were, they were crazy. They would go into black churches in Flint, the two of them, when they were like 16 years old, and then they do the whole holy roller thing, and they come back to us and kind of play with that, It's just they were just crazy. They were just, and just out of control.
Amazing. What else we have in those notes there?
Yes, I was gonna look and I see if there's anything else we can add to our little interview here.
Yeah, man. Told us quite a few great stories, that's for sure.
Well, I hope you enjoyed them.
Oh,
This is
definitely,
like
definitely.
I remember living them.
Yeah, and I'm trying to
So-
remember if there's anything else that
Yeah,
we
you
had
can
covered
comment.
yesterday.
Oh, I
don't
know
know.
what I was gonna tell you. I went to John Sinclair's house.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Yeah, it was like, I don't know how I got, probably through Shar and Ronnie. I don't know, because he was close with MC5, right?
Oh, he
And
was
that
their
whole
manager,
trans
certainly.
life, or what did they call it?
Trans love.
Trans Love
anyway.
Industries was
So-
that it?
Something like
But
that.
anyway, it's nothing other than the fact that I got to go to John Sinclair's house.
Now, was
you
this
know?
before he was in prison for the
It had
on
to
the
be.
on the marijuana bust?
Had to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. And I mean, it was like you walked in and it was like these rooms of just records, just bookshelves and bookshelves of records. And I don't, I just remember having a nice social interaction with him. That was it. But it was like, oh my goodness, I'm at John Sinclair's house,
Yeah.
And then, of course,
Did you
Smoking
get to meet Lenny at all, his wife?
yeah, they were both there.
Okay.
They were both there. Yeah, and I probably was with my sister and maybe Ron Cook. I don't know. Remember? Yeah. So, yeah, I wish I would have taken notes, because I did write a few notes on those things. It's kind of like we were talking earlier about Jeep Holland, and did he manage the Time or?
Yes.
And maybe
The
it was
Time.
one of the Time guys or something that I was.
Yeah,
connecting
Scott Richard
with or
Case, The
something.
Rationals, even Gary Rasmussen's first band, Up, I think, started with
Could have
G.
been.
And Dick Wagner was working with him for a while. There's, there's a real early version of Mystery Man, and a couple other songs that he recorded with Jeep. And this must have been shortly before he signed with Vanguard.
Yeah, pretty sure.
But those
See
came
the one
out.
that also
those
worked
came out.
at Discount Records in Ann Arbor?
Iggy
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I didn't kind of. Didn't,
I just couldn't remember if it was Jeep Holland or I knew Iggy did, but I think Jeep Holland did
Yeah,
too.
and then
Well,
when he
Jeep was the manager.
Yeah, right.
Oh.
Of
And
the
then,
record store, and I
Right.
think he hired Iggy.
Oh,
and then he
okay.
left and went.
Right.
You
He
know,
went to New England, I think Jeep did, after
Yeah, and he did the same
things
thing
kind of
there.
fell
or
apart
something.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in contact with this Steve Vandenberg of the time. And unfortunately, he lives over on the west side of the state. I had mentioned about possibly doing the podcast, and I didn't really commit.
The Time, fill me in, because I'm apparently I was thinking of The Time, which is,
Yeah, it's
Prince's The Time.
Morris
THYME.
Oh, okay.
TH.
I have seen
Yeah,
that. I have
and
seen that. Okay.
they were kind of significant because they recorded a Neil Diamond song, "Love to Love," and put it out on A Square Records. It was a pretty good song, and this is around the time that Neil Diamond was really on the upswing with
Oh, that picture
Solitary
you have
Man
out there. Oh my
and,
gosh.
Cherry Cherry.
Yeah.
And he had this other song. He worked for the Brill Building, Don Kirshner, as a songwriter.
Yeah.
And so
yeah,
somehow
yeah.
Jeep got a hold of this song. The Time did a version of it. Really, it's a good record. That's on that same collection of Jeep Holland recordings that the Dick Wagner stuff is on. It was put out by Big Beat Records, a European label.
Okay. I've
They
gotta look that one
also
up. I don't know if I have
did the collection of Rational songs.
Oh, I don't
all the
have that.
Rational songs that Jeep Holland
I have to get
had
that.
recorded, which is really a good double
It's an import,
CD.
right? Import on that.
Yeah, but
What's the name of that?
If Think Rational is
Think
the
Rational?
name of that one. But if you belong to Apple Records, the whole thing is on there.
Oh, it's
The Apple Music.
yeah. Okay.
Because I paid $30-some
Yeah.
for that
Whoa.
CD. Because you couldn't find the Rational stuff anywhere. And they also re-released the only album that the Rationals put out, and that was on Bob Cruz. They got involved with Bob Cruz. Must not have talked to Mitch Ryder before they signed with Cruz.
Oh, yeah.
And anyways, that album was unavailable for years. This company put it out, and they somehow got a hold of live recordings of the Rationals at the Grandy Ballroom, and that's on there. So there's almost like a live concert.
Yeah.
There's the studio album, and then there's like a live
Sweet.
concert. Not great sound though. It was I know it's kind of ragged. I'm not quite sure how that one was recorded. It didn't sound like a soundboard recording.
We'll have to ask Gary when he comes up if he's got
Or
anything better.
ask maybe ask Scott
Yeah, when
what
we
he
get there,
knows
yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
When we go and see him.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So here's a piece of paper from way back when. Write down, and I don't know if I wrote that.
Oh,
or
Jeep
did-
Holland.
And then I think it was one of the Time
Apartment
guys.
2,
So
North
that I was
Division,
connecting.
Ann Arbor.
Right.
We're gonna have to have these for the podcast when we do your
Any
show
of the
here.
time. Wow.
This is some of the
Okay,
little
wow.
bonus stuff.
And
Yeah,
so
Steve Vandenberg. If we think about it, remind me, and I'll give you his contact info.
okay.
And he probably, he likes to talk about his time in the time.
That's wild.
Time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wrote out. It said Eddie of the Time, but never
Because
got his last name.
they opened, they were kind of, they were working maybe with both Pete Andrews and Jeep, because those guys were kind of working together
I think so.
until SRC, or Scott Richard Case, went solely with Pete Andrews, and that broke up the partnership.
Wow.
But Vandenberg says that they opened for The Who at the Fifth Dimension in Ann Arbor. They also opened for Jimi Hendrix when he played there several weeks later, and the Yardbirds when they
Really?
played the Fifth Dimension.
Holy crow.
Wow.
So you got, this is the kind of talent that was at those teen clubs
Right.
back in the day. It's incredible.
Yeah, it is. Wow.
And so
The picture of there was a photo of the Who playing, and Peter Townsend's on stage, and the audience is no farther away from
Yeah.
him than you are from me.
Unreal.
And
Unreal.
the stage is, like maybe 18
Right.
inches high or something like
Had to be
that.
one of their first shows in Michigan, huh?
It was the first show
okay.
in Michigan
Wow.
at
Yeah.
the Fifth Dimension.
Wow.
well,
And the first show on their first concert.
And that would have
tour,
been 65?
Seven.
7? Well, they didn't
60
get over here till 67?
67. They
Oh,
were
wow.
big shots in England, but nothing had really hit big here in the United States until Happy Jack.
Okay.
And that was in 1967, and they toured behind that.
Huh.
And
mean-
that same year they played at the high school that my
With
grandson
SRC.
attends right now.
Yes,
oh,
they're
that's- I
following
remember-
them.
Yeah, you talked about that. Yeah.
It's amazing.
So,
I-
anything else? Andy?
So remember the Bubblegum Fruit Company or something
Mm-hmm.
like that?
1910.
1910 Fruit
Yeah.
Company.
So they're playing at Mount Holly, and Carolyn talks to one of them or whatever, and and then they drag us all out to the big van that had all their equipment and stuff. It's like, okay, and we're sitting out there chatting with them, smoking dope and whatever, and then they're going to go back in and perform again. I'm going, well, we were out in the big old truck, it's like, and I mean, we never had any connection past that, but I thought,
All the crazy stuff.
they could get their way into any place. I'm telling you, and I would just be right behind them.
Well, yeah.
So, I'm sure there's other things in here, but I'd have to look. So, yeah, we talked about so
Amazing.
much. So we talked about the Who. We just talked about and we talked about Mark Farner's crazy hair. And
Have you talked to Farner since then?
no.
Okay. So if I were to see him, I should.
Well, I don't know that he would remember. He wouldn't necessarily remember me. He might remember my sister. He probably definitely would remember Carolyn.
Pete Andrews.
But Pete, in his book, had good things to say about SRC.
Well,
Although he
Pete
didn't-
Andrews got John Lennon to come to John Sinclair's benefit.
Yeah,
That's
that
that
was pretty
connection.
So-
important.
That's some
Yeah.
cred.
Yeah.
Were you there?
And,
No,
and
yeah.
also Andrews
What year
mentioned,
was
and
that?
Andrews mentioned
Don't
that
remember.
they never had the 45.
Because I knew he and
They
Lynn.
couldn't
72,
come up
73,
with
you
the
may have been
45
I remember
that got
hearing about
radio
it, but I would-
play
maybe
that
my
drove
sister
the
saw it,
album.
but I didn't.
Yeah.
And
It was the
45s
free
were
John Sinclair
becoming
thing,
less
so-
important, but still they were
right,
important to
yeah.
drive the album.
I remember
you know.
hearing about it, but I don't think I.
Must
So-
have been 71 because I was 70 at the
Yeah, that was 71 for the
Free John Sinclair thing.
Sinclair
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, we were there for that one.
Yeah.
Lynn was a soldier, I'll tell you.
I was
Yeah.
there.
Right.
Yeah.
And we drove back to Saginaw after, because John Lennon didn't come on till like 2 in the morning.
2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I know. It was like we were there for like 8 hours waiting
Yeah.
for Lennon.
Crazy.
Yeah, we drove home too.
Yeah.
That was a long night.
We've had a couple of them
Yeah.
recently.
But to see John Lennon, that was
Right,
the whole
right,
thing.
right.
Yeah,
Heck
really.
yeah.
Well, Stevie
Yes.
Wonder was there.
Yeah.
Wasn't he a surprise guest?
I think so.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was surprising that he came out in support of John Sinclair.
Yeah.
You just wouldn't think that
Yeah.
Stevie would do that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, Seger was there with Teagarden and Van Winkle and Commander Cody and the Lost Planet Airmen. And I remember Up opened.
Right.
Gary Rasmussen's group opened.
My biggest, I think, memory of that whole night was when Bobby Seale and all the Black Panthers circled the stage.
Really.
And because we were pretty high.
Right.
that.
Duh.
And
Really.
I just thought, because we were up in the balcony, and I just thought, wow, if the FBI wanted to get rid of everybody,
Drop
this
a bomb
could
on
be
this
it,
place, eh?
man.
This would be it.
Everyone-
You are all arrested.
Yeah, all the revolutionary people
Yeah.
are here.
Yeah, I'm sure the FBI
reminds-
was all over the Chrysler Arena that day.
Did you guys see the making of the We Are the World video that was on Netflix? It just came
I
out
did.
recently. And then I can't remember who said it. Paul Simon He said something to somebody. Goes, I think it was Paul Simon, or somebody said it to Paul Simon. He goes, "Man, if they drop the bomb on this tonight, John Denver's back on fucking top again."
Paul Simon is who I was trying to think of much earlier in the conversation. I remember my sister. I did not go to this. My sister told me that they played in Saginaw.
Yes.
The Wyagogo.
And so, and she was there, and I don't know who would have gone with her, but she was there. And at that time, Paul was pretty fleshy. He was a little heavy, you know, and he tried to hit on my sister, and my sister's gorgeous. She's like Elizabeth Taylor, beautiful, right? So I couldn't blame him, right? But she would have no part of it because he was oversized,
Okay.
right? You know, but it was like, hey, you got Paul Simon hitting on you. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know? But
Well,
anyway.
Bob Dyer loved to tell the story. Is you know, he booked them before The Sound of Silence was a big hit,
Okay.
and they're
Who booked them?
Bob Dyer. He was
Oh,
a
Dyer, okay.
he was a DJ, Saginaw WKNX.
Oh, you mentioned. Yeah.
And so they had a very small fee, and as soon as The Sounds of Silence hit, okay, the fee,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sure doubled or tripled,
Right.
or maybe even quadrupled. But they came to play, and they honored the original contract.
Cool.
And so Dyer was, you know,
Pleased.
he was always impressed that
Yeah,
they did that.
sure.
And then, you know, of course, Simon wrote that song "America," which mentions Saginaw in
Saginaw,
the lyric,
right.
and that
Yes,
all
it
came
does.
from really that appearance
Right,
at the
right.
Wyagogo.
Yeah, that's cool to know that part
Yeah,
of it. Yeah.
right.
We've
yeah.
had little things like that up here this way anyway. The Birds played in Bay City, right?
Yeah, at
Yeah.
Dan Canyon,
Dan
and
Canyon.
then months later they played at Daniel's Den.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that happened, and then we had was it? There was another someone else after the. Jeff Beck was up here. Yeah, Jeff Beck was
With
up
the
here.
Yardbirds,
Yeah.
yeah. He played at. He didn't play at Dan Canyon, but he
Daniel's
played at
Den.
Daniel's
I
Den,
was
and
there.
they played
I was
at.
there.
I think they played at the Blue Light. I might be wrong on that though. I'm not.
And
I know the Animals played at the Blue
Right.
Light.
we had an Ike and Tina show in Saginaw.
Oh yeah.
Um,
The Saginaw Auditorium had some major.
No, this was at
Black
the
Axe.
CNO Hall.
that's the one that
I
you got
showed
the
you
thing.
they
yeah.
had. I
Okay.
think
That little-
I
Yeah, but-
finally found it.
Oh, all right.
They opened up for Jackie Wilson.
Yeah.
What a show that must have been.
Right.
And then
I have a Jackie Wilson story.
That's right. That we've talked about that yesterday. Okay, let's talk about that one.
We went. It was. I think the Stooges were going to be at the Grandie, and I don't know how this connection happened because again, I'm just hanging out with people. It's like so. We drove my sister and I drove our car, and I think my sister was in the front with maybe one of the Stooges, and in the back it was myself, Jackie Wilson, and somebody else. And I'm like 15, right? And we're driving to the Grandie, and he made the comment about me. You will say it, I won't. But he's sitting there now again. You know, I'm a little, little 15-year-old, and he's kind of putting his hand on my knee, and just smiling at me, and I'm going, okay, what do I do with this? So when he was hitting on me, and it was like, okay.
Oh, man.
I hadn't been around the world at that point, so I don't have any clue of what to do. But
You
I'm
mentioned
sure Jackie would have been happy to
I
take
was
it.
happy to show me the way.
Yeah, he was kind of famous for that.
Yeah.
you were mentioning Twiggy at the start of the show. Was there any ladies that came around on tour or that you were hung out with, or did you make any did Joni Mitchell was in Detroit for a while? Did you get any hookups to do any of them, or any meet and greets, or get to see any of the ladies of music from that era?
Yeah.
Okay. No, you're just,
Yeah, I
just
did
the
see
guys.
Joni. I did see Joni out in Berkeley.
Yeah.
And it was like, it's just so fabulous. Yeah, so fabulous. Yeah. But I did see. I wanted to mention because not many people saw him at that point. I think it was pretty early. I know James Brown been around a while, but he came to Flint, and I think U of M might have sponsored him or something, and he performed in this small auditorium, and there's like wire or just folding chairs. So there's 2 aisles, folding chairs, and there's probably 100 people.
Wow.
And I'm there with my Lebanese boyfriend, and I'm the only Caucasian in the room.
Wow.
And it's James Brown and Bootsy had just joined him,
Oh,
you know, and it was like, this is just, it was unbelievable, you know, because there was like nobody there.
Yeah, well, that's when the band broke up, and he recruited Bootsy and his group. So he was kind of like starting over a little
Starting
bit.
over, yeah.
That's
Maybe
probably
that's
why
why.
it was in a small venue
Small
like
venue
that.
like
wow.
that. Yeah.
What a story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just, I was just couldn't believe it, you know. It
Yeah.
was really
Wow.
cool.
What a great place to
So-
see James Brown.
Right.
Yeah,
man.
yeah. I mean, you know, and he did the cape thing. He
Oh,
did it,
yeah, of
you know, he did
course.
the whole thing, you know. And he could do it back then, you know, because it was.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I saw him. Did you see him at Soaring Eagle?
No, I saw him at Vets Park in Saginaw, 1970.
Oh, it's still early on.
Yeah, yeah.
We saw him at
That's
Soaring Eagle.
One of
must have
the
been 90s.
greatest shows
And he was, you know,
ever.
he had gained weight and everything, but he still had the moves. I mean, you know, he was very good.
Well, that must have been not that long ago.
No,
then.
I was thinking it was in the 90s, I believe.
Yeah.
Do you remember, Lynn, when that was?
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, it was quite a few years ago. Well, James Brown's been dead for how long? He's been,
That's true.
yeah, quite a
I
few
watched the
years.
funeral
Yeah.
on TV.
You did?
That was so bizarre.
Oh,
Well, bits and pieces of it. But I think it lasted for 3 or 4 days, didn't it? And they changed his suit every day
Wow.
in the, you know, and wow,
Was Mike there videotaping all this?
somebody was.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of the Ernie K. Doe.
Mike, you're a sex machine.
We met Ernie K. Doe when we went down to the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, and yeah, it was really great meeting him. I've always been a fan of his for so long. But after he passed away, his wife Annette, or Antoinette, was quite a character in her own right, and they had like a shrine in the mother-in-law lounge, which Antoinette and Ernie owned, and Ernie would perform there periodically. And, you know, he had a lot of very colorful stage outfits. And so after Ernie died, they had a shrine for him in the bar. And they had a black showroom dummy with the wig on that Ernie wore, and they would change the clothes periodically with Ernie's colorful stage outfits.
Wild.
Yeah.
Too
And that
much.
went on until Antoinette died, I think.
I think Trombone Shorty owns it now.
Oh, wow. He's good.
Yeah, but it was nothing really fancy. It was just like,
Right.
you know, just a brick,
Yeah.
very.
Most of the bars in
exactly.
New Orleans.
Yeah, I mean, that was a pretty rough area. Even when Ernie was there, you know, the door was locked, and they would look out the window to see who was there. And if you looked okay, they would open the door
Really?
and lock it behind.
Did you
And it
get
would
in?
be the same. Oh, yeah, sure.
Oh,
I mean,
nice.
you know,
She
we're a
picked
bunch
us
of
up.
white people, you know, down in the dangerous part of New Orleans. Help let us in.
Let us in.
Well, Antoinette picked us up. at our-
Well, yeah,
Oh.
yeah. I had
With the big
called,
slippers.
you know, to see if he was going to perform, and she said he's rehearsing right now. And I said, well, you know, we'll come over. Of course, not knowing where it was. Oh no, I'll come and get you. So we had 8 of us, and she came over in this large van. She still had her pink house slippers on, and picked us up from the hotel. Took us back. We spent the afternoon with Ernie in the bar, putting money in the jukebox, and he was singing along with the bar microphone. And his mother-in-law lived in the back of the house,
Oh, my Lord.
which must have been Antoinette's.
It's a
mom.
juke joint of sorts there.
Yeah.
eh?
Oh,
Some.
So we went back. He was doing a concert, and the young people, almost like the punk rockers of New Orleans, had kind of taken him as, you know, like a
put him under their wing. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you know, as the respecting him as the figure of rock and roll that he was, and so he did a concert, and I mean, it was absolutely filled with like punk rock kids.
I'll be darned.
You know, with the tattoos and earrings and piercings, and but we were there at night, and when
What year was that?
1999, and we got You didn't go, right, Lynn? It was just the guys. It was
went,
myself and Tim Lavasser and
Denny Dino didn't go.
Denny Dino didn't go. Who else went with us? It wasn't. Well, anyways, I was just the guys.
Mhm.
And this. Do you remember Fred Hammer Williamson? You remember this guy?
I remember of him. Yeah.
Okay, well, anyways, he was like an independent cab driver, and he picked us up and took us to Ernie's bar, and he kept saying, "You sure you want to go here?" And he said, "Yeah, we want to see Ernie K. Do." He said, I'll drop you off, but you have to promise me you're not going to attempt to walk back to the hotel." So, okay,
And what city was this in?
New Orleans.
Oh, yeah, right. You said it.
And so we went to, we saw Ernie perform, and it was getting late, and we could not get a cab.
Oh, but
Ernie
you couldn't.
K. Doe actually went outside the bar in his outfit with rings on every finger and thumb and tried to wave
A cab.
somebody in, couldn't get anybody to stop.
Nobody.
So we lucked out. There was a guy who was a cab driver, was at the show, and he took us and 3 other white guys that were there, jammed in, sitting on each other's lap, and drove us home.
Unbelievable story.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. Gary, that's a great one. Well, Barbara, you brought in all these stories. You were a thread of time
I
for
got one
so
more for
much.
you.
Well,
Yeah,
let's lay it on us.
Come on.
Then we're done. Then we're done. Eric Clapton in the Cream, Little Richard, front act, and I swear it was Charlie that bought me there, but I have notes in my little box at home that it wasn't. And I know that they played in Olympia in '67, I think, and then Grandy '68. And so we were literally backstage. I mean, we were as
Wow.
close, where Ron is right now.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, Little Richard. Whoa, what an act. It was just amazing.
That was at the Grandy?
It was at the Grandy.
Yeah.
Wow, Little Richard at the Grandy.
It was just phenomenal.
Yeah, that's when he really came out as
Oh, he-
being really flamboyant.
He
and
did.
very gay.
Yeah, and it was just, I mean, and I saw, if you've seen the recent film on his life,
Oh, yeah.
you've seen that,
Sure.
and I thought, God, that's where he was. That's what it, and it's just, his whole thing about, and I just think about it, everybody, it's like they all came after him,
Yeah.
I mean, like Bowie with the makeup, and it's just like, oh my God. I mean, when I saw that film, I thought, yes, they've all,
Well,
he has some claim to that.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. Yeah, he
Yeah.
was one of the real important figures.
I saw him on Johnny Carson early on, where he kept saying all of that. Prince, he ain't shit. Prince, Michael Jackson, he ain't nothing.
Oh, I know. Yeah, no, that's what he did
And-
in the 80s and the 90s or whatever, the
Yeah.
last 20 years
And
of his life.
I did it first.
No,
you
no.
know.
Yeah, because he didn't get any of it when he wanted.
And I kept talking to the TV. That's right. That's right.
Well, him and Chuck Berry definitely. There was another one too.
Yeah.
I think Al Green is not. He didn't really go
Fats
like there,
Domino.
but there's a bunch from that era that.
Yeah,
that
Fats
Right.
Domino was one of the real early ones too. Ray Charles.
Ray Charles.
Little Richard, Chuck Berry. Really important black artists.
Yeah.
Right.
And even James Brown. I mean, really, James Brown started in the 50s.
There you go.
He sure did. He's
yeah.
that old. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, yeah. So, yeah.
And let's not forget Bo Diddley.
That's
True.
right. Thank you.
True that.
Or let's bring it around to your
Well, they
Detroit
go to
John
Muddy
Lee Hooker,
Waters,
right?
John Lee, yeah.
Well, I mean, Bo Diddley and Chuck Berry, every rock and roll guitar player has been influenced by both of them.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you read anything about any of those English groups, and they all say that they would listen to them,
Yeah.
when they were, they would listen to that. They had that access. They somehow radio-wise, they listened to it all,
Yeah.
So,
Barbara, thank you for bringing all these stories. You intertwined through so much of the history of the beginnings of Michigan rock and roll, beyond, and all your influencing, as well as your partying, as well as who you knew. and how you took it forward, and the fact that you kept it all these years and are sharing it with the Rock Hall of Fame here
right.
in Bay City with Dr. J here. We can't thank you enough for your time, your memories, everything. I hope there's a book with all these scraps in it someday, because that's the last bit here before, you know what I mean, that we could use here.
Yeah.
So what a
And
great
you
show.
survived it all.
Yeah,
which is,
here to tell the story.
Definitely.
Well, thank
Definitely.
you. I'm very flattered to be here and be able to tell my story, because I tell people the story and it's kind of like, oh, you groupie you, oh, you groupie you. And it's like, well, kind of, sort of, but not really.
Yeah, no,
You know?
You were very innocent. Yeah.
We thought, how do we podcast this? You know, is this our first groupie story? But it wasn't. You were more of a thread in the scene. Matter of fact, you got a lot of stories out of these guys tonight as well. I mean, just the stories came out, and being that thread in that time period. I mean, the three between Sir Fred here, Dr. J, and yourself. There's a lot of history and music here, and especially with music. So it just hit a home run for the podcast. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank
definitely.
you.
All right.
Thank you all.
Wonderful show.
Yeah.
On behalf of our hosts, this podcast wouldn't be here without generosity of the Bay City Historical Museum, which hosts the Rock and Roll Legends Hall of Fame. We'd also like to thank all of our guests, and especially to the listeners. The MMHP is found at 989.network, or where all podcasts can be found. You can find updated information as well as Dr. J and Sir Fred's Picks of the Week on Facebook. Also on Facebook, check out Mr. Mike's Local Music Live series and Scott's Mid-Mitten 15 from Harvest Canteen Studios, featuring one-on-one interviews with Michigan music artists. You can connect with Scott on the web at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at michiganrockandrolllegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com, and Mr. Mike on YouTube as Mr. BT1. That's MRBTEE and the number 1.
On behalf of us hosts, Dr. J, Sir Fred, Mr. Mike, and myself, we'd like to thank Mr. Eddie Switek, the